Following that day, it's going to be a long, slow run. So longer distances, starting off with 5 to 6 miles and progressing that closer to the 13 miles for the half marathon. We have a lot of time to build up to that. So we're able to kind of undulate it and doesn't have to be like a linear approach from week to week, right? Just tack on a mile every time. So we can kind of play around with that based on how feedback looks like. So we got that long run, and after that long run, have some type of mobility and very light accessory. Some light accessories that I was thinking about were some like Poliquin step downs or step ups, just to work that VMO, some knee health stuff, core, like side bends, hip eccentrics, just because I had hip eccentrics on, I think it was Wednesday. I like to do those 2 to 3 times a week with runners, and then some maybe ankle complex strengthening.
Yeah, and it's easy to get like kind of cheesy with some of the balance stuff, but if you just have someone standing on one leg for a little bit, like sometimes like that's enough. Like
you don't have to do like an upside down Bosu ball, one eye closed, pinky
it's
up.
Always Bosu ball, like something or other.
Yeah.
Since you're running on a Bosu ball. The Fitness Movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all one place, zorfitness.com. Welcome to the program design battle. I don't know something dramatic we need to call this. So I had an idea today, and I ran it past Day, and she had a little bit of free time, so we went forward with it. So basically, I have a new client that I'm onboarding right now, and I haven't ridden any training for her yet. And she has goals of she signed up for a half marathon coming up in May. And so we're like 16 weeks out from that event. And that is more of a fun, but be prepared for it type thing for her. And she also is someone who has CrossFit experience and has a lot of the basic movements down and wants to keep a touch on the lifting side of things and just doing some basic kind of CrossFit stuff along with that. So that being said, I reached out today and was like, hey, we should each, write out a week of the programming, and then we could compare and see who's better. You guys will have to help us determine a winner. But actually we didn't have a ton of time, so I ended up writing all the run work, and Day ended up writing most of the lifting. And it's not every detail written out, but you get a good idea of how we each thought about how you could basically lay out a week of her training, and hopefully there's a good comparison of what is similar, what might be different, because we do know some of the constraints on her life. So Monday is a really busy day of school for her, so she's going to rest on that day. And then basically every other day she has at least a window to train, but Saturday she has a long window. So that is when her longer run is going to be. So besides that, there's other practical constraints of like things she wants to do, things she, what she has access to in terms of equipment, etc., like every client that we've ever had. But basically we're going to walk through day by day, and I'll let Day take over and run us through what she came up with.
Yeah. So when you gave me all the details, before you actually gave me the details and you were like, hey, let's write up a program for someone like just 1 week, their first week, of someone who wants to do a half marathon. I already had my gears turning, like I want this, right? Like a perfect program. And then you sent me her information and like her, things about her. And then kind of the program tends to change from that, right? Because like the main things that I look at is where they're at, where they want to be, but also things that they want to do. Because really, like, no program works if there's no consistency and adherence, and that's one of the biggest things to consider. So if someone can't adhere to it and they can't be consistent, then it's just not going to work. And I'm of the mindset that most programs work if they follow strength and conditioning principles, and they're smart and thought out. They're going to work as long as someone is consistent. So, after reading things about her and all that, I'm like, okay, I switched up a few things that I originally had written out.
What would have been different?
I think I know, like, one of the things
you had reverse hypers every day and she didn't have that. So
yes. Right. Equipment is one of them. Equipment is definitely one of them. But one thing is, like, let's say at first you mentioned that you want to do a half marathon. So I'm already like half marathon prep type, right? Like, yeah. I'm thinking about that. And then as I'm reading more about her, it's like, okay, this is actually recreational for her.
Yeah.
and she likes to do CrossFit too. So, okay, like, I'm gonna add in some CrossFit stuff in there then if that's what she likes doing and it's something that she wants to do.
Yeah. I think that's always what happens in like the coaching process is like you have an idea of like someone tells you something and you have an idea of what that is in your head, but then you have to ask them questions to get a better, like a more clarity around what they actually mean when they say that. So they might be like, "Hey, I have a half marathon coming up in May." It's like, okay, are you Diego and you're like, a professional triathlete and you're doing this, or are you like someone who's very recreational and you just want to be prepared and not get injured when you're going through that process? And I think the athlete the coach asking the questions allows the athlete to determine their level of seriousness and just be honest about what they're willing and capable of taking on.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. And also, I saw that she was young, college student, so it looked like she had some free time almost every day. So it's like, okay, cool. I could sprinkle things in, and we're not too time constrained. She doesn't have much outside variables like kids and all that other stuff. I mean, being a college student is a lot, but
Yeah.
all right, cool. So looking at the first day, Monday's a rest day, right? So when
We
I
start
went
on
on to the
Monday,
next,
people. We
yeah,
start
yeah,
on
we're
Monday.
gonna
They do
start.
not start on Sunday. If you set up your
Yes,
calendar where they start on Sunday, I don't trust you.
yep. No, I'm the same way. It's and actually one of the coaches here, the head triathlon coach, he has it so that the team rests on Monday. So I'm used to that calendar.
That's actually not like I feel like everyone does like the Thursday Sunday rest day thing, at least in the CrossFit community. But like,
Yeah.
man, if you have all this free time on the weekend and you're swamped on Monday because you come into a inbox full of emails and fires to put out, like take Monday off, train on
Hmm.
Sunday. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's not why we're here, but I just threw that in there.
Yeah, so Monday's her rest day, so that's that yellow block there. We're gonna scroll over to Tuesday and we see that I have this as one of her marathon prep run training days. And that's where I'm gonna put something with a little bit more short intervals, short distances with high intensity. So I'm gonna start off that day after that rest day with a high intensity run, so that she's fresh for that. And she's starting the week with something nice and tough, nice and fun.
So
Probably a
what
track
would
workout.
okay I was
Yeah.
just gonna ask like what is high intensity here because like some people hear high intensity and they think like you know uh 40-meter dash sprint. um
Yeah, we're going more for like it'll probably start off more in like the 600 to 800 meter distance and
yeah,
then
so
trickle
speed
down to
for someone
something
who's training
shorter.
for a half marathon.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not like a 10-yard dash going on there.
Yep.
So that'll be more high intensity. I want that to be a little bit so that she's fresh after that day. And then that's something that I may add on that same day. Maybe some like quick accessory work after that. I didn't add
Yeah.
anything on the Excel sheet, but that's something like on the second or third week I might start thinking about depending on how well she recovers. And then we go on to Wednesday, and I'm going to have this just as a full lift day. So there's not going to be any running. So for her, her structure will be 3 days of running, 3 days of lifting, with one of those days of lifting looking a little bit more like a CrossFit workout. So you
That's
get that
exactly what I
CrossFit
did.
in
That's
there.
funny.
Yeah.
Literally, that's
Nice.
exactly like 3 days of running, 3 days of lifting, with the one being a little bit more CrossFit. That's literally what I
Right.
did. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then so on that second day, I have a full body lift. So I just put a full lift and a little bit, focus a little bit more on tempo. So this is where we're looking a little bit more tempo eccentric
You cheated
training.
and look at my, you looked at my sheet. I know you did.
Oh yeah, totally.
This is weird. I
um,
also had a full body lift on Wednesday. I'm pretty sure.
oh really?
Yep.
Yeah,
Keep going.
I put all three of them as full body lifts. And so I put as block one, right? We're doing some single legs, variation. So I put front rack barbell split squats, some barbell RDL. So there's that bilateral hinging. Block two, we're going to go into more upper body. And I put both horizontals. So like a horizontal row and a horizontal push. So you see a dumbbell bent over row, single arm dumbbell bench. kept it unilateral on the bench. And then block 3, I'm just focusing on some accessory stuff that will help complement the running. So
Is that because
some
run volume
hippie.
keeps creeping up at that point?
Yeah, exactly. So trying to build robustness in those common injury
Yeah.
sites of
A
common
lot.
injury. So
Yep.
yeah,
No, that makes sense. I think a lot of people who are in the strength conditioning world, and you mentioned this on previous podcasts, were like, my job as a strength conditioning coach for people who are like, triathlon, for example. It's like, if you're training them like a strength athlete, and like as the blocks get closer to like their competitive season, like they're just going to be tired all the time and have heavy legs. Whereas like almost like the progression here is sort of like reverse, where you go from like heavier, more intensive things further away from their season, and then as they get closer, you're pulling more and more out, and it's just like accessory supportive work so that they're staying healthy as they get close to the season. So like the
right. And
progression
it's
is almost a regression, but intentionally so they have more bandwidth for the other stuff.
right. And if she's like preparing for a half marathon, even if it's like a recreational thing, right? Still
Still
gotta
stress.
make
Yeah.
sure that um that you're managing the recovery and the stress that's being added on there, because volume for that running is going to increase throughout the weeks. And I was looking at it, just seeing when her half marathon, which is like is it May-ish? I was
Yep.
looking at like 5 to 6 week blocks or so, with this one being like more intensive on the lifting and then going less intensive on the lifting as we go get closer.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So again, that Wednesday is like the tempo day, full body lift. Then we go Thursday. I'll probably start off with some low intensity stuff, low to moderate intensity, just accumulating volume. And again, that day I may add in an accessory block at the end if I haven't added it in on Tuesday. So either Tuesday or Thursday we'll have an accessory block. I'm leaning more towards Tuesday. So Thursday might just be that long, low to moderate intensity, a little bit more like threshold stuff. And then Friday, we get into another full body lift with some more isometric focus. So we had the eccentric focus with tempo. Now we're going to do some isometric. Um, so a lot of joint health stuff for that. And I start off that block 1 again with lower body stuff. Some single leg hinging this time, and some lateral lunging. Lateral squats, lateral lunging, just to work a different plane, since I know running is very sagittal and very just forward movement. So working in different planes there, just to address any deficits. Block 2, we go into more vertical push and pulling. So on that Wednesday, we had horizontal push pulling. Now we're going to complement it with some vertical there. For vertical, it could go anywhere. I was playing between overhead press or push press. Push press is always fun. I know like CrossFitters like to do push press, and she said she likes to do CrossFit, so I might add in push press versus some strict overhead pressing.
And that's one of those things too. It's like, maybe in your head you're like, oh, I'd like to make it a push press because that'll kind of scratch that itch for her. But then it's like, maybe that's too much, knee flexion where you're getting that same kind of pop off like the end range. And if she's,
Right.
dealing with like anterior knee pain, it's like, that's hard to know if you're looking like, oh, what are we going to do 8 weeks from now? But if she gives you feedback and it's like, hey, this felt great, I was having fun, you're like, okay, we can keep doing push press. Or she's like, oh, this felt like trash. You're
Right.
like, okay, let's go to the strict press. It becomes
Yeah.
really obvious sometime when you have the person in front of you actually going through it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where this first week is going to be super important with feedback, so that we're
Yeah.
progressing appropriately. Where we're making sure we're not overloading, not underloading. There's nothing that's nagging in terms of pain and injury.
Yep.
And then again, I'm ending it off with some accessory work that complements running, but I'm also going to make it kind of CrossFit-y, adding in an EMOM, and some skill work in there, like wall walks, maybe some light snatch, barbell cycling. So yeah,
Yeah, makes
some
sense.
core stuff as well. And then following that day, it's going to be a long, slow run. So longer distances, starting off with 5 to 6 miles and progressing that closer to the 13 miles for the half marathon. We have a lot of time to build up to that. So we're able to kind of undulate it, doesn't have to be like a linear approach from week to week, right? Just tack on a mile every time. So we can kind of play around with that based on how feedback looks like. So we got that long run, and after that long run, have some type of mobility and very light accessory. Some light accessories that I was thinking about were some like Poliquin step downs or step ups, just to work that VMO, some knee health stuff, core like side bends, hip eccentrics. Just because I had hip eccentrics on, I think it was Wednesday. I like to do those 2 to 3 times a week with runners, and then some maybe ankle complex strengthening.
What's a hip eccentric?
So there's different kinds that you can do. There's like the ones where you lay down, you put a kettlebell on your foot, and you have your leg up in a 90-degree angle, and then you slowly bring it down. So you're really working the hip flexor and strengthening that.
Yeah.
And sometimes some people, like there's some exercise where you could do it standing, right? Like just standing and then bringing up one leg to 90 degrees, and maybe you have a kettlebell on your foot or something like that, or a mini band.
Yeah, I did a similar thing. I just called something different.
Yeah, exactly. And then on Sunday will be a full lift with some Metcon stuff in there, so some CrossFit stuff. I'll start off with like cleans. So the reason I chose cleans is because I have a day of tempo, a day of isometrics, and then now this day will be a little bit more like concentric training. So really focusing on that triple extension, some cleans, working on some power. And after working on some cleans, probably incorporate some lighter cleans in the Metcon with some wall balls, maybe some toes to bar, some gymnastic stuff. So just have a Metcon with those type of elements, and then finishing off with some easy light accessory that includes things for glutes and posterior chain and some core.
Cool. How would Saturday's run be different from Thursday's run?
Saturdays versus Thursdays.
Yeah.
At first, it'll probably be very similar. It'll probably be similar, but Thursdays will be a little bit higher intensity. So let's say if I'm working with heart rate zones, I'll probably go more towards zone 3, zone 4 heart rate and sustaining that for longer. So it's more focused. So Thursday will be like a little bit more like a race pace, anticipated race pace, which is a little higher, right?
This is a weird day. Mine is so similar.
Interesting.
Yep.
And then that Saturday is going to be more like zone 2 conversational. It should feel like kind of too easy in a way for some people. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Let's go over mine.
Yeah. You want me to put it up?
Sure. Yeah.
Talking about.
All right. So starting off, Monday's the rest day. I just gave her some basic movement work to, just so you get the joints moving through a range of motion. And sometimes people literally will just lay around on a rest day, and sometimes it's nice to just encourage them to do something that will improve their ability to move the next day. So some basic stuff. Then Tuesday, that is when she's going to be fresh. So very similar today. She had higher intensity intervals. This is sort of one of my ways to do it. So if you look to the run, high-low run, 5 rounds. This is like the bulk of the work of this run day. It was 5 rounds, 3-minute run at her estimated 10K time trial pace, and then 2-minute run at recovery pace. So high-low running where it's still continuous running, which is going to carry over really well to something more along the lines of like a half versus you could probably just make that complete rest, like 3 minutes at like a hard effort, like an 800 meter pace. No, I mean, well, it would have to obviously be less than that time-wise if it was like something like an 800 meter pace, and then like complete rest if it was like someone who's like getting ready for like a 5K. Whereas like something with a half marathon, the durations of that are going to be longer, and then also the recovery can be still active. So like still running in this case, or jogging. So before all that, basically I give her some run prehab work, ankle cars, arch raises, Patrick step ups, which is like that Poliquin step up that Dave was talking about. Source and hold. I'm not sure if she has access to that. We've got to figure that out. And then going through one of our run warm-ups and actually doing that run. So that was Monday. Or sorry, Tuesday. Monday was rest. And then Wednesday, the basic idea here, like that's going to be her CrossFit conditioning day. So a little bit more, this is probably really the only neurologically demanding lifting day, at least starting off. And I would say Definitely hinging, probably RDLs most of the time, like that bilateral hinge. Uh, this might be the only knee flexion based, besides maybe like a split squat or something, which I actually didn't add in, but I probably will steal that from Day. Maybe something like a leg sled, or preferably a leg sled over, or like a machine. What do you call it? Like a leg press over a hack squat or over a barbell squat. Not necessarily because of like the balance components or anything like that. Just like because of where your joints are at, you get a little bit less knee compression with like a leg sled versus like a traditional back squat. So it should help keep the knees just a little bit happier. And then probably do pressing, because then you're going to hit press on Friday again. And there's pulling twice more in the week, so I don't need to do pulling again on that day. So lower, probably, squat and hinge on that day, pressing, and then some sort of a CrossFit related sport EMOM. So like touching on some of the movements so that they don't get too rusty. So it might be like, toe to bar, maybe like a reverse lunge, goblet reverse lunge, let's think, maybe bar facing burpee. And it's like not super hard, just enough where you're breathing a little bit and kind of can feel that and make sure you keep a touch on that, right? And the next week, it'll probably be 3 different movements or 4 different movements, with maybe just like a little bit of carryover so that she's not getting too sore from it. So pretty basic, just a little touch on that. And that was Wednesday. Thursday, we're back to running again. So basically same format as day, where it was like alternating run, lifting for the most part. Except I do incorporate a little bit of like more like in-gym movement type work, even on the run days, which we'll see if that works practically for her setup or not, based on like, she has a treadmill in a different gym sometimes than the full gym. So she might not have access to all this. So some of this I try to make it a little bit more body weight. So incline treadmill walk to start off, alternating minutes of forward and backward walking to get that backward incline walk just to warm up the anterior knee a little bit. 3 rounds of hip 90-90s, cook hip lifts, kneeling adductor rocks, just some prep work for the hip. And then a little more prep work. I have these Caesar sits or Caesar sits, however you say it. And the ones like a raise where you're like working on like that ankle extension, or I guess it would be plantar flexion. And then the other way, it's more like a plantar fascial stretch where you're doing a curled sit, like your toes are curled under. And all that's just a little bit of prep work, going into some running at just like a building effort to get her ready for her tempo run on this day, which is, again, exact same thing the day had on that day. And in this case, I just have her starting off really conservative, 20 minutes, like 80% effort, just getting an idea for me as the coach, like where she's actually going to be at mileage and average pace. And then accessories, tib raise, calf raise, some balancing drills.
I think that's something that, looking at yours, I would add in more as some balancing stuff too. I think that's really good for someone who's doing a running program, to incorporate. And it's easy to incorporate too. Warm ups, cool downs, like after a run or something like that.
Yeah, and it's easy to get like kind of cheesy with some of the balance stuff. But if you just have someone standing on one leg for a little bit, like sometimes like that's enough. Like I've stood on one leg before, and like you can feel like as you're like, what is it, inversion, eversion of the ankle, like you can like feel it like pulling all the way up towards your knee on those tendons. So it's like doesn't take much, and you can get a decent effect out of it.
Yeah, you don't have to do like an upside down Bosu ball, one eye closed,
It's
pinky
always
up.
Bosu ball, like something or other.
Yeah.
Since you're running on a Bosu ball. Anyway. Yeah, Friday, back to lifting. This will be a second touch on hinging on that day. Probably I'll try to make one of those unilateral. So maybe like a landmine, there it is. Like single leg RDL, maybe dumbbell if balancing isn't an issue. Back to pushing on that day and pulling, so push and pull. And likely I'll try to make one similar today, one pulling variation, or one day more of a horizontal pull, one more of a vertical pull. Might actually do 2 vertical pulling days as well. Like maybe I'll probably make both of them because she wants to work on her pull-ups. So I don't know if I told Day that, but I will probably make two of them like priority vertical pulls just because like that's what you're trying to develop, and then probably at least one of them have a secondary horizontal pull. And then she also wanted to work on core, so I have that on Friday as well as Sunday. So the specifics of that, I don't know if they matter that much, but those are like the big things that I'm going to be looking at. And that's something that the upper body stuff I could probably continue to progress. I probably will continue to progress all the way up until her race because that's obviously not going to be affected by running. Saturday. This is her long run. So basically a pretty short run warm up into 30 minutes at a cruise pace. And again, just getting some of our basic metrics from that. I thought about starting more like 35, 40-minute range because she's already probably in the 30-minute range for most of her runs, if not even a little bit longer than that. But then also, I would guess just like volume wise, this entire week is way more training than she's been doing because she didn't have like a log or really any videos or anything for me, which is fine. Like that's very common if you're not being very serious about your training. So that being said, she's probably already going to be a little bit fatigued and just kind of feeling maybe beat up at this point in the week. So I don't want to overdo it for her first week and be like, hey, here's the 45-minute run. And she's like kind of dreading it or whatever. Because there's plenty of runway. We're 15, 16 weeks out from the race at this point. So plenty of time to build, starting super conservative there, which is probably something I maybe wouldn't have done earlier in my career, but I'm fine doing that.
Well,
And then Sunday, I kind of figured in future weeks, she'll feel more beat up on this day because we'll get more aggressive with that run as we go, where that's going to be in the 75 to 90-minute range, probably at some point before her race. So basically an opportunity to move around, start to get back into those ranges of motions, remembering that she's probably going to be a little bit tender, and then therefore making that lift day upper body. So like basically pull up and delt because we already hit a little bit more lat and like like tricep on other days, and then back to the core again. And then before you get to that lift, she's just going to be doing some basic movement work. So 10 minutes, choice cyclical at easy pace. I'll encourage her to stay on machines for that. So it's low eccentric. 3 rounds of a hurdle step over, which that's kind of maybe is day's variation of the hip eccentric. You're getting into that hip flexion. 8 bend and bow, which is just going through flexion extension, hip airplanes. Again, just lateral hip control there. 3 rounds calf raise and bottom of a squat. Quadrupled hip cards, again, just working on some range of motion there. Assisted pogo hops, just light and easy. Hanging knee raises with a squeeze at the top, which once again, kind of working on that hip flexion. So, and then into our lift of pull up delt core for now.
one thing you mentioned was like how probably by the end of the week she's probably going to be pretty tired. And especially like if she hasn't had any logs or anything like that. And I know I put like my concentric focus day on the end of the week, which is kind of like backwards. Which for the first week, like I'm okay with that. But probably as time goes on, that will change and there'll be some rearranging because like as volume goes up, more fatigue, right? Like doing a heavy clean at the end of the week is not ideal. So things will definitely change. Like this first week, I think it's like very trial error, trying to see what works, what doesn't.
Yep. And also maybe in your defense, like there's times when tempo runs leave me way more fatigued and sore than a long run at an easy pace. So it also, for me, the Saturday run is going to be more like a mimic trying to build towards that half marathon. So I don't want it to just be at like I said cruise the first day, but I don't want it to be like a zone 1, zone 2 run. Like I want it to be something where you're kind of feeling like you feel in a half marathon, which maybe that wasn't the goal for you. And like, that's just supportive work to help get you there for some of the other sessions, which then you're not going to be carrying as much fatigue into the next day, which is fine. So it really kind of depends how you're going to progress each of the days as to, and also like, who knows, like we could all be wrong in the fact that like, she's just toast by the end of the week and we didn't expect it or something. And she actually needs another rest day on Friday or something.
Right.
So that's very possible too, that you get down the road and realize that something's not working. You have to change it.
Yeah, for sure. And, like that's another thing too, like doing a combination of all this stuff, kind of like that hybrid approach. Like as weeks go on, I may change it to like 2 days of lifting and then 2 full days of resting and keep the 3 days of running, since those are priority. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's cool. There was quite a bit of similarities there. Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of cool.
Let us know whose design you liked better. Who I should give you to this gal. But yeah, no, it was fun. If you enjoyed this format, let us know so we can do it again sometime. Maybe we'll have Chris jump on and do it, and we could do it for a different type of client. So if you have somebody you'd like to see us all write a program for, or maybe if you want it done for you, send it to me and I'll maybe consider it.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Sweet. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
Thanks for listening today. If you're someone who just started listening to the show, I would encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. If you're someone who's been listening for a while, I would encourage you to rate and review the show. And lastly, the best thing that you can do to support our work is also the best thing that you can do for your performance. And that is by hiring one of our coaches. Until next time, stay the course.